En marge des réunions de printemps 2023 du Groupe, de la Banque mondiale et du Fonds monétaire international, le FMI a publié un rapport sur les perspectives économiques régionales pour l'Afrique. De ce rapport, il ressort que les pays du continent restent résilients, mais le manque de financement pourrait considérablement affecter les perspectives de croissance pour les mois à venir. En Afrique subsaharienne en particulier, les perspectives reflètent un ralentissement de la croissance en 2023 pour la deuxième année consécutive et une baisse de la demande d'exportation en raison de la lutte mondiale contre l'inflation et de la guerre en Ukraine. Dans ce décryptage, Wenjie Chen, chef de division adjointe au Fonds monétaire international en charge des perspectives économiques régionales pour l'Afrique, propose des solutions face à ces défis. Madame Wenjie Chen, merci de nous rejoindre sur Africa 24. Dans un rapport sur les perspectives économiques régionales pour l'Afrique, le FMI a souligné, je cite, « a big funding squeeze » pour l'Afrique subsaharienne. Qu'est-ce que cela implique et en quoi est-ce un revers pour la région?
Yes, by the big funding squeeze, we mean that financing conditions have deteriorated significantly in countries across the region. And this is because of higher borrowing costs precipitated by global monetary policy tightening, increases in sovereign spreads, and with virtually all frontier markets being shut out of the Eurobond market since spring 2022. And the dollar also reached a 20-year high last year, increasing the burden of dollar-denominated debt service payments. And this is a setback for the region as the funding squeeze comes on top of existing economic vulnerabilities, such as high inflation, growing debt, and low growth.
Selon le Fonds monétaire international, le changement climatique, la gestion de la pression sur les taux de change et la fragmentation géoéconomique sont les principaux défis auxquels est confrontée la région de l'Afrique subsaharienne en particulier. Quelles solutions concrètes votre département propose-t-il pour aider les pays de la région à relever efficacement ces défis?
Now, as for concrete solutions, let me first emphasize that the IMF stands ready to assist all our member countries in terms of policy advice, capacity development, and also financial assistance. And in that regard, we offer financial support in the context of programs, and with the newest ones being the food shock window and the resilience and sustainability facility to address both food insecurity and climate adaptation. As for concrete policy advice that we give to countries now on the climate change, this is really a global problem. And unfortunately for the region, climate finance flows has really fallen short of the needs. In 2020, for instance, Sub-Saharan Africa only received $20 billion in terms of climate finance, most of which was concessional financing. But adaptation needs are estimated at around $50 billion per year. So it's therefore very important that climate funds really are allocated to the region, and also that they do not crowd out basic needs like health and education. On exchange rates pressures, now exchange rate adjustment, unfortunately, is unavoidable, given that changes in the external environment of higher rates are likely to remain in the foreseeable future. But there are ways how we help countries and recommend policies to manage the costs of exchange rate adjustments, including tightening monetary policy, coordination with fiscal policy to keep public debt sustainable, and very importantly, strengthening social safety nets, because those that are the most vulnerable will be most affected by the rise in prices. And lastly, on fragmentation, what's important is that countries build resilience and expand the pool of domestic resources to counter potential external shocks. And for those that could benefit from potential trade diversion and new FDI inflows, to really prepare themselves to provide the best conditions possible for that.
La croissance de l'Afrique subsaharienne devrait baisser à 3,6% en 2023 avant de rebondir à 4,2% en 2024. Le taux d'inflation médian de la région était d'environ 10% en février 2023, soit plus du double depuis le début de la pandémie de Covid-19. Les défis actuels pourraient obliger les pays à réduire les ressources destinées à des secteurs de développement essentiels tels que la santé, l'éducation et les infrastructures, affaiblissant ainsi le potentiel de croissance de la région. Comment accompagnez-vous les États dans ces domaines et quelles sont vos recommandations?
Now, the IMF again stands ready to support our member countries, including those in the Sub-Saharan African region. As of March 2023, the IMF has lending arrangements with 21 countries in the region and also has received many program requests. The disbursements associated with IMF programs, emergency financing, facilities, and the special drawing rights allocation represented $50 billion between 2020 and 2022, almost twice the amount dispersed in any 10-year period since the 1990s. And the IMF also remains committed to supporting countries in the pursuit of the Sustainable Development Goals, thus complementing the efforts of other development partners.
Les aléas climatiques continuent de faire de la sécurité alimentaire un défi majeur pour la plupart des pays africains. Les estimations montrent qu'en Afrique subsaharienne, 132 millions de personnes étaient en situation d'insécurité alimentaire aiguë en 2022 et que davantage de personnes devraient se retrouver dans la même situation cette année. Environ 80% des pays de la région connaissent également une inflation alimentaire à 2 chiffres. Comment la question de la sécurité alimentaire est-elle abordée au niveau de votre département?
Now, the fund is actively contributing to the international response to the food crisis. The fund has stepped up its engagement to help tackle the global food crisis, collaborating closely with other development partners. And this helps ensure tailored, efficient, coordinated responses that build on each institution's mandate and comparative advantage. And in particular, the fund is providing policy advice and also capacity development, and this helps to guide our members' decisions on strengthening social safety nets, in particular to protect the vulnerable groups or on identifying ways to address food insecurity without recourse to export restrictions and to facilitate donor engagement. Now, we are also deploying financial support, and in September of last year, the board approved a temporary food shock window under the rapid financing instrument and the rapid credit facility to provide low access emergency financing for urgent balance of payments needs associated with the global food shock. And as of March of this year, 4 requests from sub-Saharan African countries for financing under this temporary food shock window have been approved. And those countries are Burkina Faso, Guinea, Malawi, and South Sudan.
La fluctuation du dollar américain a augmenté les vulnérabilités liées à la dette en Afrique. Dans le cadre de votre politique monétaire, y a-t-il un plan de stabilisation en cours qui aidera les pays africains à mieux faire face aux problèmes d'inflation, de hausse des taux d'intérêt mondiaux et de gestion de la pression sur les taux de change?
Yes, so in terms of exchange rate pressure management, we see that exchange rate adjustment is unavoidable, given that these changes in the external environment of higher rates are likely to remain in the foreseeable future. But there are ways to manage the costs associated with these exchange rate depreciations, including the tightening of monetary policy, adjusting fiscal policy in order to keep public debt sustainable, and very importantly, also to strengthen social safety net and really addressing those people that are most affected by the rise in the prices. As for debt vulnerabilities, the risks really remain elevated in the region, with 19 out of 35 of the region's low-income countries either in debt distress or at high risk of debt distress. Still, country circumstances, of course, differ, and in most cases, public debt is elevated but still manageable. And the IMF has been working within its policy frameworks to help its members deal with debt issues. And in this regard, the common framework has begun to deliver on its potential. Chad, for instance, has reached agreement with its official and private creditors on a debt treatment, and Zambia has also made important progress. Nonetheless, we believe the framework needs to be improved, and we have made concrete proposals in that direction. In particular, greater efforts are needed to enhance creditor coordination. I think this is due to the persistent high inflation in many of the advanced economies and also globally that we're experiencing in terms of food, fuel prices, and that has triggered higher interest rate hikes. And in turn, what that means is higher borrowing costs for many countries in the region, which therefore makes it more costly in terms of the debt burden that many countries has to face. And as a result of that, the dollar has strengthened as well in terms of capital outflows going from emerging and developing countries back to the advanced economies where rates, the interest rates are higher. And therefore that has put, more burden on the debt servicing of the external debt part of many of the African economies.
À ce jour, seulement 4 pays d'Afrique subsaharienne bénéficient de la nouvelle facilité pour la résilience et la durabilité du FMI lancée en 2021 dans le but d'aider à relever les défis structurels à long terme, y compris ceux posés par le changement climatique. En mars 2023, le FMI avait conclu des accords de prêt avec 21 pays de la région. Y a-t-il des projets en cours visant à étendre ce nouvel instrument de financement à d'autres pays africains durement touchés par la crise?
I think you're referring to the Resilience and Sustainability Facility that's part of the Resilience and Sustainability Trust, which was intended really to support low-income and vulnerable middle-income countries in addressing longer-term challenges. And those include climate change and pandemic preparedness, and to support sustainable growth and prospective balance of payment stability. This is not meant to address urgent current balance of payment needs. And just to give you some background, in the initial phase, we have been working with countries that expressed early interest in this resilience and sustainability facility, and we're relatively well advanced in implementing climate change related policies. The fund actually already approved 5 programs within the 5 months of this RSF becoming operational, and out of which there is one sub-Saharan African country, namely Rwanda, for which this has been approved, and the Seychelles have just reached staff level agreement as of March 2023. However, as you can imagine, demand continues to grow, and many other countries have expressed interest in this facility, and we are committed to serving our membership and meeting this interest. But at the same time, we recognize that each country faces a different set of climate challenges. So the time required to complete the necessary diagnostics, identify reform priorities, and provide adequate capacity development support for policy implementations could vary.
Wenjie Chen, vous êtes la chef des divisions adjointes au Fonds monétaire international en charge des perspectives économiques régionales pour l'Afrique. Merci d'avoir répondu aux questions d'Africa 24. Merci à vous de nous avoir suivis dans ce décryptage. Restez sur Africa 24 pour les prochaines éditions.